Hello guys, and welcome back to another cold episode. On today's episode, as you can tell by the title and the thumbnail, we are going to be discussing a whole bunch of archetypes and talk about whether or not they are going to be good post the new Adventure Engine Flunderies selection pack in Master Duel. So, as you can tell, this is going to be a predictive list, not a list based on any data. This is just kind of going to be, given what we've seen in the TCG and the OCG, how might these decks perform in the new environment? So let's quickly start at the top with ABC. ABC is a bad deck. It's just bad. You got the one ABC Dragon Buster, which makes the deck bad. I'm not going to talk about it too much. Let's move on. I think this deck is genuinely slapped on. Adamant Spader is still a tier 1 meta contender, but it is significantly underplayed. I don't think the Adventure Engine is going to help that, seeing as how it doesn't really mesh well with Adventure. So, in terms of power level, I'd say it's a tier 1. In terms of actual players who play the deck, it's currently tier 2, and I don't think that's going to change all that much. Adventure Engine, technically, I expect it to be as prominent as a tier 0 deck, being played in a wide variety of decks. But in all reality, in terms of power, the Adventure Engine is absolutely insane and will be tossed into a lot of tier 1 decks. Now, the way that I said that is on purpose. It's going to be thrown in to tier 1 strategies to make them or not into tier 1 strategies, but thrown in to make tier 1 strategies. The decks themselves that it will be thrown into aren't things that would necessarily be tier 1 by themselves, or would already have been tier 1, and they're just making it a little bit more consistent. Things like Virtual World or Phantom Knights or Tri-Brigade or what have you that could already be considered tier 1 or tier 2, I think Adventure is going to make them very strong. Adventure by itself, definitely strong, but as a 40 card list in Adventure, maybe not. It definitely needs a little bit of help, but yeah, there you go. I'm sure that's what most people are here for. Yes, it's going to be tier 1. Yeah. Altergeist is still at 1 with Multi-Faker. It's still a bad deck. You need more than the singular Multi-Faker. You need to draw it. Not being able to... Having to search it, I should say, is way worse. Ancient Warriors... I'm gonna put it in bad. I think going second, specifically with Ancient Warriors, is pretty difficult. They lose to a few interruptions that aren't just like negates. So there's that. And if you make a big monster, like a 4K monster, like Warlord Savage Dragon, they tend to have issues. So there's that. Aromas, also bad. Scythe, Artifacts, also bad. I think this is... Yeah, this is Black Rose / Rose Dragon stuff. They can make Hulk pretty easily, and Baron. So the deck is rogue, I'm going to say. It's not crazy strong, but given the fact that they can go into both Hulk and Fibrax as well as Baron de Fleur, makes it a fairly competent strategy. I think not a lot of people are playing it at all, so there's that. Black Wings lose to just about everything. Chaos Max Dragon loses to just about everything. Alright, so let me make sure that Phantom Knights are not also on here. Phantom Knights are also on here. So, this Cherubini is going to be specifically for BA. BA is bad. I know. Hear me out. BA kind of doesn't do much. It does a little, but it doesn't do much. Sure, it can make Zeus. Sure, it can make Dante, send 3, pass stuff. Beatrice pass and set a whole bunch of back row. But in all reality, it is a bad control deck and a bad combo deck in a format that really needs you to be either or. It's just kind of middling. Buster Blader is specifically good when dragons are very good. Dragons are not very good right now. It's bad. Chain Strike. I'm going to also consider this burn. Burn, again, not very good. I think this is the Sacred Beasts? I don't think this is the Egyptian gods. I think this is the Sacred Beasts. Am I wrong? I don't see the Sacred Beasts. Anyway, they're bad. Charmers, terrible. Mech Knights. Mech Knights are actually probably slept on a bit. They're pretty good. They're fairly decent. Nothing too crazy. But with Invoked, they are very, very strong. And overall are still competent enough to, I would say, be rogue tier. Cyber Dragons are bad. Infinity just doesn't cut it. A singular Omni Negate is not enough. And yes, technically they have a better chance going second, but given the fact that a lot of decks can set up multiple Omni Negates, which realistically, or just monster effect negates, realistically, Cyber Dragon has such a difficult time with. Access code, I think, is Cybers. I think there's also Adagnister on here. Oh, wait, hold on. Adagnister, is that? Yeah. Adagnister's in here as well. So we're going to say that this is Code Talker. Code Talker is not very strong, just in general. They don't really have a good turn one, and they're not very good at breaking boards either. Dangers. Dangers are actually pretty interesting when paired specifically with Dark Worlds. They can do quite a lot. They can draw through basically their entire hand and go through just so much. The problem is that when they actually get their setup, it's not very strong. It's okay, but it's not too great. However, Dangers themselves are very strong and can be thrown into a myriad of different decks, which makes me put them a little bit higher than a lot of the other decks that I've mentioned thus far, given the fact that so many are bad. Yeah, all in all, I would say Dangers are good due to the value of their individual cards, not the actual strategy itself. Dark Lords, because of Despia, I'm going to throw into Rogue. When paired with Despia, they are very competent, and they have good turn one boards. Not the strongest, but they can at least often recover, or at the very least survive, and dealing with a first Dark Lord can be problematic for a lot of different decks. So all in all, I'm going to put it in Rogue. Definitely not the strongest, though. Moving on, we have Dark Magician. I actually think that this deck is probably slept on. This deck can do quite a bit, and it has an interesting way of interacting with the opponent, as well as an interesting way of searching out cards. So all in all, I would say that Dark Magician, this may be just my own personal bias or what I have seen with the deck, but in all reality, I feel like it has a lot of pretty decent plays. So I'm going to put it in Rogue. I think it is stronger than basically everything else that is currently on this list. Even Blue Eyes, yes. It just does a little bit more. It's probably at the bottom of Rogue. Definitely on the cusp of being bad. Dark World, again, paired with the Danger stuff, it's very nice. But in all reality, the Danger stuff brought itself up due to the nature of the cards being able to be splashed in a lot of different engines. Dark World doesn't really have that. So Dark Worlds are okay. Not the greatest. DDD is another deck that I believe is probably pretty heavily slept on. Reason being, this deck has a lot of really solid cards at its disposal in Master Duel. It's missing a few key components that would bring it up just a little bit more, but in all reality, I think that this deck is... It's not like it's hard to play or anything like that, as people tend to make it out to be. Sure, the lines aren't exactly linear, but they're not Ritual Beasts or, I don't know, Dragon Link. And Dragon Link's actually a deck that is played by many. So, I think it is just the fact that its payoffs aren't nearly as rewarding. Despia, I'm actually going to throw into tier 2. Again, due to representation, as well as the fact that I do believe that this deck is pretty competent. This is more of a pure Despia build, or with like the Frightfur engine, making it a lot more consistent and able to put up things like Masquerade Dragon, as well as Despia Q, to kind of clean up board states and just like tax your opponent out of the game. Very, very strong overall, and has some weird ways of interacting that most decks don't really play around too well. We have Destiny Heroes. I'm actually going to throw them in tier 2. Now, this is kind of a surprise even to me, but with DPE, they can go first or going second. I think if you end up going second, this deck is absolutely insane. It doesn't lose to things like Nibiru going second nearly as often, just given the fact that you can kind of crack boards pretty easily under the 5 summons, whereas if you end up building a going first strategy with something like Plasma and DPE, oftentimes your board is either going to end on a big Nibiru token and DPE, or you are going to end on Plasma and DPE, which can be problematic for a lot of decks to out. Even something as simple as a Darklaw DPE tends to be very powerful against a lot of the metagame. So all in all, I do think that this deck would be still situated pretty well within the metagame, even after the Adventure Engine comes out. Dinos are also going to be thrown into Rogue tier. I think that they're very strong. They don't really play nearly as well with the Adventure Engine, nor a lot of these other decks. But all in all, I still think it would be very competent and played enough to be a good deck. We have Dogmatica. Dogmatica, I would say, is... in terms of representation, I would also put it in tier 2 up here with the Adamanticators. It's hard for me to really say that Invoked Dogmatica Shaddoll is not one of the best decks of the format, but I think so many people are not playing it that it's really hard for me to say that this is the best deck, or it is tier 1. I do think that it's strong enough to be very similar to Adamantipator, but it is not quite as common. So, in terms of representation, tier 2. In terms of actual power, tier 1. We have Dragon Link. This one I'm going to throw into Rogue tier simply due to representation. I think that this card, or this deck, is also potentially a tier 1 meta threat, especially post... Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, post-Adventure Engine. This deck is tier 1. Sorry, I forgot that this was post-Adventure Engine. Post-Adventure Engine, this deck is absolutely going to stomp everyone. Reason being, it can throw in the entire Adventure Engine, a few more hand traps, play a 60-card engine, find any one-card starter, and be off to the races. This deck will be an absolute terror in the future thanks to the Adventure Engine. Yeah, that's basically it. Any set of 5 cards can basically be full combo, as well as potentially having an Omni Negate on your side is very helpful. That allows your Striker Dragon to more often go off and actually get its effect off, which means that you're more likely to actually see the fruits of your labor. Dragon Maid is a... I'm going to put it in Rogue simply due to representation. I do not think that it is a good deck. I do not think that it will pair well after the... after Adventure Engine shows up, but I do think that it is a deck that exists and a lot of people like it. Actually, I'm going to move up Buster, ABC Buster as well, because with the Adventure Engine, I think that more people will play the ABC stuff. I don't think it will be that much better. I still think it's a bad deck, even with the Adventure stuff, but I think more people will be playing it, so yeah, we'll throw it up here with the Dragon Maids. I think this is supposed to be Drytron. I'm not seeing any other Drytron stuff on here. I could be blind. But I think we'll use this as Drytron. Realistically, Drytron is still very strong. I think the problem is that a lot of people are relying on specifically Herald and just trying to still do Herald stuff instead of trying to just get the advantage out of other powerful ritual monsters. Right now in the TCG, we are seeing that Drytron is still being piloted by a few other players very well to top successes, but instead of focusing on Herald of Ultimateness, they are focusing on other such things. You know, I think it's a new ritual monster. I literally just saw it today. I cannot remember the name of it, but it's the card that negates Fusion, Xyz, and Synchro monster effects while they are face up on the field. We also have, you know, the ability to go into Dagda, Scythe, as well as IP Masquerena, you know, locking your opponent out of the main phase 1. I don't think that's currently available for Drytron, but the fact of the matter is, you can play other things. So, I think Drytron needs to adapt in order to be better, but I still think that it is very strong, especially in best of 1 formats, if you're able to set up the negates that you need. Still very strong. Moving on, we have Machina. Machina, or more specifically Earth Machine, I think is very strong overall, but not nearly as played. I think in terms of power level, it's again tier 2, very similar to something like Dogmatica and Adamantipator, just a tier lower. Just not as many people are playing it because it's really difficult. Eldritch is still tier 1. Maxi being in the game means that Eldritch will always be such a prominent threat unless they actually start to hit more of the Eldritch cards, or more specifically a lot of the floodgates surrounding Eldritch. Realistically though, this card or this deck is very, very strong and probably the best of the format. Although post-adventure it does... I don't know, it will get splashed into other like 60 card lists, I would imagine, and it could become even more powerful, or it could be even weaker. This one's hard to tell post-adventure. Endymion, and more specifically any pendulum strategy, is actually pretty good, given the fact that Electromite is a card that exists. So all in all, rogue tier. Not going to explain that much. Evil Eye, bad. Evil Swarm, bad. Exodia, bad. Fairy Tail, Luna, Kaiju. I'm actually going to put this in tier 2. Luna Kaiju is absolutely crazy as one of the best going second strategies. Thinking of all of these decks, besides specifically Eldritch, it has actually a fairly decent matchup, given the fact that you can literally just Kaiju your opponent, normal summon a Luna, get the advantage off of it because your opponent is likely to negate, and then just get back the advantage off of the Kaiju. So all in all, plus you're playing a lot of other going second strategies, it just makes it very, very powerful as a going second option, and one of the best besides the hero line. Just a strong deck, especially in best of ones when you cannot really plan around getting Kaiju'd. Fluffle post-adventure engine is probably worse than it is now. A lot worse. Reason being, a lot more decks are going to have a higher power level if they are able to throw in the adventure engine, and Fluffle can't really do that. So it just doesn't really do enough. But a very interesting strategy. Pre-adventure, I would have probably put it in Rogue. Flunder is a deck that I will put into tier 2. We're still missing I think the trap card that basically allows them to extend even further. No, it's the quick play. It's a quick play spell. That allows them to extend even further and go through and play through hand traps in particular. However, I think that this deck will be very, very strong, and already is, with the cards that have been announced, a competent meta strategy. It also plays around Maxi ever so brilliantly, and if we get that quick play spell, I do expect them to jump up to tier 1. Mostly due to representation. What card is this? Oh, this is for hires. Yeah, they're bad. Photons are also bad. Gem Knights, not doing much. Yup. Nordics, Ghost Tricks, yeah. Clad Beasts, I have no idea what this is. Goki? I think that might be Goki. I'm just not going to talk about that because we already talked about that. Grand Maju, Ice Barrier, Ignite. If this is not specifically Ignite FTK, which, to be fair, it's still a bad deck because it's always played by bots. So Ignite's also bad. Adagnister. I think that this is a terrible deck. I hate this deck with all my heart, but it's good. It does do things very well. Especially in best of ones, people aren't going to be siding in cards that specifically hit this deck, or have a side deck in general. So they're not going to be playing cards that just like out this deck and can, win. So there's that. Also, I feel like whenever I see or play against an Adagnister player, they will always have the I land already in hand, and I will have nothing that I can do to stop them. So there's that. Infernity, not great. Infernoble, not... I always want to put them higher because they are actually very good. Just no one plays them. I'm going to put them in bad. No one plays them. Infernoids exist. Alistair, I'm going to put right up here next to Dogmatica. They're basically one in the same. Gamma Seal, again, I'm going to put them right here up next to the Snow. Luna Kaiju, basically one in the same as well. I have no idea what this is. I have never seen this card art in my life. What? Trains. Also kind of with Earth Machine, but we're going to say that this is Trains. Not very good. So, I'm going to put the Necro World Banshee up here with Eldritch. Eldritch basically already has two separate builds. You can either play a 40-card version with a lot of floodgates and just kind of slowly play the game using the advantage that you gain off of the Eldritch cards to just kind of slowly control the game into a win through things like Skill Drain, IO, and the Eldritch cards themselves. Or you can play the 60-card Necroworld Banshee Baylor Drock version of the deck with things like Unizombie and some of the Shiranui cards to allow you to go into a zombie world, which is very strong against a wide variety of decks. However, post ABC, or sorry, not ABC, post Brave Engine, I do think that this deck does become significantly weaker, because with Brave Engine, it just gives you an Omni Negate, which, could be problematic for this deck. However, going first, again, the Adventure Engine doesn't really care about specific types, so they can still set up the Omni Negate, which can be a little bit more problematic for Eldritch. However, even with that being said, Eldritch itself, this card in particular, Golden Lord, can kind of just sit on the field and then just stare at the opponent. And same with Baylor Drock. Even in defense position, both of these aren't going to be outed by the Adventure Engine itself. So I still think that this engine, it will be very, very strong. Tri-Brigade, well, okay, this is specifically Lyrilisc, but I'm going to say that this is Tri-Brigade Lyrilisc. Tri-Brigade Lyrilisc is going to be, and still is, a Tier 1 strategy. Yes, not as many people are playing it. That doesn't mean it is not a Tier 1. Sure, the MasterDuelMeta.com says that it is not a Tier 1 strategy, and that it's not even Tier 3. That is a lie. It is literally one of the best decks of the current format. Straight up. It's just that no one plays it. Reason being, they've all done it before. The people who are still playing Tri-Brigade are the people who just want to win, and they are literally playing the best deck. It's as simple as that. So, yeah, there you go. I think Tri-Brigade literally is easy Tier 1. Madolche. I'm not even going to put it in Rogue. It's not. Magispector, Mathmex. I mean, they make Geomathmech, which is difficult for some decks to out. Mayakashi, I'm actually going to throw... Post-Adventure, it's not actually as good. We'll throw it at the bottom. The thing is, the reason a lot of these cards or a lot of these decks are bad is because, one, they can't really utilize the Adventure Engine at all, or any other engine to really boost its power level. And two, post-Adventure Engine, if there's a deck that can play that, its power level immediately jumps up and becomes a lot more powerful. Reason being, just setting up an Omni Negate before going into the rest of your combos is a lot stronger. So a lot of these decks are at the bottom due to that simple fact. They just can't play the Adventure Engine, or if they can play the Adventure Engine, their setup for it is just not good enough. Megaliths, I mean, they have Block Dragon. Block Dragon's crazy. Yeah, I'm going to put Megaliths in Rogue. Realistically, this is just because Block Dragon is absolutely insane, and you can play, like, Baron. You can go, like, if you can get into Block Dragon, which is not too difficult for the deck to do, you can just go straight into a Baron, and they can also play the Adventure Engine as well. As I said, Adventure Engine is going to be in so many of these decks that realistically it could be a Tier 0 threat. We have the World Legacy stuff. I'm going to call it like World Legacy deck. Not very good. Melfi, also not very good. Monarchs, definitely not good. Mutants, nope. Is this the Dark Signer stuff? The Kapakapu, or Kokopakapu, as they say in the dub. What is that? What are those names? Anyway, the Dark Signer stuff. Cannot remember. Nurse Refugule Burn, again, not a great deck. Ogdotic, one every, like, 6 hands they do something. Orchist, I think post-Adventure Engine, this deck does get a little bit of a boost. they're able to play the Adventure Engine, which allows them to have less bricky hands, where they're able to actually just like get some sort of setup with the adventure stuff, which is nice. Sometimes that's enough, you know. Just playing the adventure stuff is sometimes enough to win the game. So there you go. Just basically, yeah, they can play it. Again, I'm going to put this right next to the other Pendulum deck. Basically, if you're a Pendulum deck, you can make Electromite. Therefore, you're a good deck. Unless you're, like, really bad. Phantasm Spiral. Okay, here we go. Post-Adventure Engine, we have another new addition to Tier 1 in Phantom Knights. Phantom Knights are the best deck that can abuse what's it called? Emergency Teleport, as well as the Adventure Engine. They can also play 60-card lists, and since Grass That's Greener is still viable, playing a 60-card list with Adventure Engine and Phantom Knights seems like a recipe made in heaven. In all reality, I don't know if this deck is going to be insane or just another okay deck. I expect it to be absolutely crazy, given the fact that Grass exists. Plunder. This one pairs so very well with Adventure. I think no one's going to be playing this deck. I'm going to put it in Tier 2. It's Tier 1 in terms of its strength post-Adventure. Yeah, you just throw in the Adventure Engine and all of a sudden your deck is now amazing. So, yeah, Plunder is exciting. Prankhead, also one of the best abusers of the Adventure Engine. I don't know what else to say. Genuinely insane. Any of your prank kids, normal summon, you're off to the races. You don't even need the effect of your normal monster or of your normal summoned monster in order for on normal summon. So the Adventure Engine can still be played, and you can still just like set up the Adventure Engine, normal summon a prank kid, do the whole prank kid line, and then still have like a million hand traps and other such cards that are just very strong overall. Yeah, we already talked about that one. Predaplants, not crazy. Punk, I think this is Punk. I'm pretty sure this is Punk. Punk will not be Tier 1 yet. We're still missing Deary Note, or Deer Note. But, again, with Eldritch pairing alongside the Punk engine and the Adventure engine in a 60-card kind of pile, I do expect it to be very competent and very strong overall. So, Punk, it's getting there. It will be Tier 1, I promise. We've already talked about Dragon Link. I don't know. Chaos, I guess. Yeah, that exists. I think this is Red Eyes, Ritual Beasts. I love Ritual Beasts. It's not a good deck. It's really not. Borolo. We've already talked. What? These are literally the same deck. Borreload and Striker are the same. Anyway, Rongo Bongo. I don't know what deck this would be. Salamangreat, bad. Scrap, not great. Shaddoll. Up here with Invoked, Dogmatic, and Shaddoll. Not going to explain that one. That one should make sense to everyone. We have Shiranui. We have Sumorg. This is specifically Sumorg. We already have the Lyrisk stuff up here with the Lyrisk Tri-Brigade. 6-Sam, Skull Servant, Spiral. Sky Striker, I'm actually going to throw into Tier Rogue. I think right now, Sky Striker could be considered Tier 2 simply due to the amount of people that are playing it, along with DPE being so very good for the deck. But all in all, with the addition of the Adventure Engine bringing the power level of all of these other decks up, I think that Sky Striker is probably still at like the top of Rogue. But they cannot play the Adventure Engine because they can't have monsters in the main monster zone. So, sure, they can play DPE, but they can't play DPE and Adventure, which means that, yeah, they're likely to not be the best deck, and they're going to drop down a little bit. I do expect them to still be played quite a bit, similar to Dragon Maid, but I don't think that they are nearly as strong as that, or as a lot of the other decks. Guru, This is weird, because this is like the third best control deck in the format. Kinda. It's hard to really say that this is like the third best control deck, because it depends on what you consider a control deck. You know, something like Luna Kaiju or Flunderies could technically be considered a control deck as well. So, I don't know. I'm going to put it in bad. It's okay. It's like the third best, though. Sword Soul. I still believe Sword Soul would be tier 1. This is also assuming that there's no, like, ban list throughout this whole thing, which could throw everything awry. All of a sudden, Konami could just, like, ban Eldritch, and we'd all just be like, what's happening? But in all honesty, I still think Sword Soul will be absolutely crazy. I think that they will be the bottom of tier 1, but I still think that they will be tier 1. I still think they're around the same power level as Adamantipator. I think just Adamantipator is not as heavily played. This is more pure Tenyi. I think pure Tenyi could also see play at a rogue tier, but I don't think it's going to see that much play. I think, yeah, in terms of power level, probably rogue tier. Thunder Dragons, definitely rogue. Definitely like at the top of rogue, actually. Thunder Dragons are very, very strong, and yeah, I don't know what else to say. They're just strong. They're just good. They don't really play with the adventure engine too well, which is like the entirety of this list. But even without the adventure engine, they're still pretty good. And with Colossus, if you end up having the Water Enchantress, the adventure engine does kind of get shut down a bit, but that shouldn't be that big of a deal. Trap Tricks, not a good deck. Tri-Brigade, we're going to stick up here with the Lyralisk. I think that Tri-Brigade, even pure, is still crazy, and Zodiac Tri-Brigade is the best deck of the format. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. Zeus is crazy. True Draco, just given the fact that we have so many draw cards, as well as having things like Skill Drain and the like, make it... Also, just the fact that it's cheap means that a lot of people will play the deck, so it has a boosted amount of play, but I don't necessarily think that it is one of the best decks. In fact, I'm going to put it down here, because I think a lot of people have stopped playing this, even though it is cheap. I think there are just... people have purchased other things. So, yeah. We have Virtual World. Virtual World is also one of the best decks to abuse the adventure engine. This one, however, is the most shaky when it comes to what I believe to be a tier 1 deck, post-adventure engine. Sure, they can utilize the adventure engine very well to set up the adventure engine and then maybe just survive the turn, and then on the crackback with the right setup, something like a Setchuche, which now they can actually utilize with their Virtual World monsters. It's nice for them. However, I don't know if it's going to be the best deck or one of the best decks. Sure, with the adventure engine, they're strong, but this one's the most up in the air. This one could be just like tier 2, bottom of tier 2, or it could be one of the best decks. Like even better than Eldritch. Witchcrafter, not a good deck. Zephyra, not a good deck. Yang Xing, not a good deck. I have no idea what Zeus is. Why are you here, Zeus? I mean, Zeus by itself is rogued here. Zeus is insane. If you can make Zeus, so many decks have a problem with it. Especially if you have a 2-activation Zeus. Oh my gosh. Zodiac is also going to be up here with the Tri-Brigade stuff. Just, yeah, pretty self-explanatory. And then, of course, we've already talked about this. So, yeah, that is the tier list. There you go. There it is. Yeah, tier 1, I expect Eldritch to still be tier 1. I don't think that guy's going anywhere unless Konami actually hits the problematic cards, things like Skill Drain, things like IO, and the like. The adventure engine could basically be considered tier 0 with the amount of play that I expect it to receive, similar to something like a DPE. I just expect it to be everywhere, and it will be paired with DPE to be absolutely annoying. But I do expect it to be very fun. We have Prank Kids, as well as Phantom Knights, as well as Virtual World, as well as Dragon Link, all abusing the adventure engine to its fullest, while also being able to make their entire plays either through stalling for a turn with the adventure engine in order to go and just kill your opponent on the crackback, or in order to just do a full line of combo, and then supplement it with the adventure engine to have a stronger turn 1 board. Then we have the Tri-Brigade stuff. It's pretty self-explanatory. I still believe Tri-Brigade is the best deck of the format, even though Sword Soul seems to be the most common. Tri-Brigade, just so many people have already played it. It's already been explored in 3 formats already. So Sword Soul just being new allows more people to play it and is just more played by more people because more people like synchros than they like links. Anyway, yeah, I still believe Tri-Brigade to be the best deck. And Sword Soul, it's Sword Soul. I think everyone's going to play it. And yeah, that's basically it. I hope that you guys did indeed enjoy. If you did, a like is very much appreciated. And if you want to check out more content like this, as well as more Yu-Gi-Oh!, then just be sure to subscribe. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. And remember to always stay frosty. Bye-bye.